I have the pleasure of talking today with Bob Buss, who is the Executive Director for the Hawaii Council for the Humanities. Thank you so much for being here. The Hawaii Council for the Humanities, that's kind of a mouthful of an organization, but I know it's a nonprofit.
It is.
Tell us a little bit about it.
We started in 1972, and we're part of the National Endowment for the Humanities. And so there are 56 state and territorial councils, all doing humanities in their state. Now, the short answer of humanities are the stories that connect us, that are significant, and that make the past and its culture relevant for today. That's what we do.
So what I do know about the organization, having participated myself, is that History Day has become your signature, one of your signatures.
Right. Well, we have two kind of audiences that we focus on, and one is putting the humanities into K through 12 schools, and that's our Hawaii History Day project. And everyone always asks, what's the day? And it's a misnomer because it's a week actually of National History Day, but backing it up, we just held Hawaii State History Day, bringing students from 8 districts, including Molokai and all the neighbor islands, the major neighbor islands, from projects that the students have done on conflict and compromise in history. They did.
So History Day is the culmination of actually many weeks of work and exploration that the children do with their teachers and your resources.
Yeah, it's a year-round project for us, and that's why we're doing it, not so much for the contest, but to get students involved with doing research, telling the stories that are important, and then doing it through project-based learning.
So when you talk about humanities, that is a big word.
It is a big word, but it's basically, it can be divided into 2 words: human ties, community. Those are the kinds of things that everyone knows about. I mean, if you don't have a community and you don't have an identity, you're really sort of just out there floating. And what helps ground you are those values that come out of those connections. And that's what we have the students do in History Day. Puakea Nogelmeyer wrote a book called My Pa'a I Kaleo. Let the story come forward. Don't let it hold back. And what that means is that there are so many stories that aren't being told. History is filled with big events and big dates and big leaders and presidents and generals, but there's also other people whose story aren't being told. And I was just amazed by the number of projects that students deal with that are totally different. I mean, there was one essay that I read called The Franklin Petition, and it was on Benjamin Franklin and abolition. We all think, well, our country started with slavery inside the Constitution, and he's that other voice of saying, not on my watch it is. I'm still against that. It's still not right. And so, you know, that kind of side story that is important. And the student did wonderful research on it.
Well, and what I appreciate is that in the research for what's out there, I would imagine the students also find their own voice or their own stories, because we're all mixed here. How does that work?
Well, you know, I think part of it is that they actually find a project and suddenly it means something to them. The history book is probably the worst thing that you could try to learn something from. But yeah, they're looking at it and suddenly they're finding a primary voice, and especially if that voice is their community. I mean, we had a couple projects dealing with a big conflict in Hawaii, the H3 freeway. And they used compromises all the way through, you know, essentially a 30-year story. And it was very clear that they were at one point saying, well, there were some outrageous parts of that story, and it is my story, my community, and suddenly it resonates, because the big part is not what happened in the past, but why should we care about it? What's its meaning for today? And that's what they have to show in these projects.
Yes, and what I love so much about what you say, that humanities is about human ties. And we're just about up for this meet and greet at the moment, but thank you so much for giving us a little clarity and inspiration.
Well, and part of what I would like to say is that one of the work of the council is really bringing museums, schools, a lot of their community humanities groups together. And so part of what makes History Day successful is that this collaborative thing with the community.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your energy.
You're very well.
What a great conversation we've had with Bob Buss, who is the Executive Director for the Hawaii Council for the Humanities. Thank you for being with us.